The Millionaire CEO and the Secret of Two Lives. Hello everyone. Subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories. And don't forget to like this video and comment on what you would do in this situation. Get ready for a story that will captivate you from the very first second. Can you imagine leaving the love of your life due to family pressure, only for the truth to return in the most shocking way 5 years later? 5 years ago, a millionaire CEO, pressured by his elitist parents, broke up with the love of his life. 5 years later, she reappeared with 2 little boys who were his spitting image. Ethan Vance was a man the world admired. At 32, he was already the CEO of Vance Innovations, a multi-billion-dollar tech empire built on artificial intelligence and the cloud. He graced magazine covers, gave speeches at global summits, and shook hands with presidents. Every photo of him showed the same flawless image: golden blonde hair styled to perfection, piercing blue eyes that showed just the right amount of detachment, and a smile that could close deals before a contract was even read. He lived in a penthouse above the city's Grand Park, drove a custom electric sports car, and wore tailored suits worth more than most people's rent. To anyone who saw him from the outside, he was impeccable, determined, disciplined, and destined for greatness. But there was one thing Ethan didn't have, and for which he once almost risked everything: love. 5 years earlier, before he took on his role as CEO, Ethan had been with someone who didn't fit into the plan his family had laid out for his life. Her name was Sophia Bennett. She wasn't a socialite or a tech investor. She hadn't been born into wealth. She was an architecture student, paying for her degree with scholarships and part-time jobs, with paint stains on her jeans and notebooks full of messy sketches. She had long brown hair, expressive blue eyes, and a way of looking at Ethan that made him feel he was more than his title. With her, he didn't have to act. With her, he laughed louder, slept better, and dreamed more freely. They met at a charity event he had only attended out of obligation. She was helping to set up the stage lights, and he bumped into her while checking his phone. It was the most human moment he had had in months. Their relationship blossomed in private: long walks through the city, takeout on rooftops, and late-night conversations about dreams and fears. She didn't care about his money. She made fun of his expensive watch and refused to let him pay her rent. She made him feel real in a world where everything about him seemed curated. For the first time in his life, he imagined a future that didn't revolve around quarterly profits or board meetings. He imagined a small wedding, a cozy home, children with his blue eyes and her indomitable energy. He imagined Sophia in every version of that future, but his parents had other plans. When they found out about Sophia, the reaction was immediate and brutal. His father, Robert Vance, the chairman of the board and one of the coldest men Ethan had ever known, called him into his office and told him bluntly, "She's not your equal. She dilutes your image. Marry her, and we will begin the process of removing you from the line of succession." His mother didn't bother to hide her disdain either. "Do you really want to embarrass the family?" she asked. "What will the shareholders think when they see you with someone so average?" Ethan tried to resist. He fought. He told them he didn't care about perception. But Vance Innovations wasn't just a company. It was an empire, passed down through 3 generations. His name was a brand. His face was an investment. And as the pressure mounted, from the family, from the board, from advisors who reminded him of his obligations, Ethan felt the walls closing in around him. The worst part was that he never told Sophia the truth. One day, he simply ended it all, without explanation, without an argument. He said he needed to focus on his career and walked out of her apartment, leaving behind the woman he had imagined forever. Sophia called once, then twice. After that, she stopped. He never answered. He buried himself in work and tried to convince himself that it had been necessary, that it was for the best. But not a single day went by that he didn't think of her, that he didn't see something that reminded him of the life he had left behind. He missed her laugh, the way she said his name when she was angry, the way she made him feel like a man, not a product. Still, he never reached out, because admitting he was wrong would mean facing everything he had given up. And in that moment, Ethan Vance didn't know how to face regret. Not yet. At this point in the story, what do you think of Ethan's decision? Do you think he had another choice? Comment your opinion below. I would love to read it. Sophia Bennett had never believed in fairy tales, but falling in love with Ethan Vance had felt dangerously close to one. For a brief time, it had been more than she had ever dreamed of. She remembered the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her, as if she were the only person in the world. She remembered the nights on the rooftop, when the city lights made the sky feel infinite, and Ethan would whisper about wanting to escape the world of cameras and boardrooms just to live a normal life with her. She believed him. She believed every word, every unfinished promise between the kisses and the silence. But one day, he was gone. No goodbye, no explanation. Just a cold, carefully worded message that he needed space to focus on his future. She had waited for him to call, tried to find him, left him a long and desperate voicemail, then another. But the silence that followed was not empty. It was deliberate. It was final. And so, she stopped waiting. Sophia immersed herself in her work, pouring her broken heart into blueprints and deadlines, trying to lose herself in her studies. But only a few weeks later, she began to feel the changes in her body, the fatigue, the nausea, the missed period. She told herself it was stress, but when she took a pregnancy test and saw the result, her breath caught. She didn't cry. She simply stood in the bathroom, staring at the word positive, as if it were written in a foreign language. Then she sat on the edge of her bed and said nothing for a very long time. The doctor confirmed her pregnancy, but the ultrasound revealed something she hadn't expected. 2 heartbeats. Twins. 2 lives growing inside her. 2 reminders of a man who had walked away without looking back. She considered calling him again. She imagined what she would say, but then she remembered the voicemail, the cold response from his assistant, the way he had vanished as if she meant nothing, and she realized she couldn't go through that again. So she didn't call. She didn't write. She deleted his number. She accepted, in the deepest part of her soul, that he was not coming back. Sophia decided to leave the city. There was no longer a place for her there. She accepted a job in a smaller town, at an architecture firm, where no one asked questions about her past. She rented a modest apartment and lived carefully, saving every cent. The twin pregnancy was difficult, but she was tougher. She worked despite swollen feet, sleepless nights, and the fear of being completely alone in the world. She took prenatal vitamins with food stamps. She skipped meals to pay for baby clothes. And when the time came, she gave birth to 2 healthy and beautiful boys, Leo and Sam. They had blonde hair from the start, and the bluest eyes she had ever seen. It was like looking at 2 small versions of the man she had once loved. At first, it broke her heart to see Ethan in their faces, but with time, that feeling softened into something else, something fiercer. Love. Not for what could have been, but for what was. Her sons were everything. They were wild, loud, messy, and perfect. They were the reason she got out of bed when her body ached and her bank account was empty. She worked late, took on freelance jobs, and made plans for stores, cafes, and even barns, anything to keep the lights on. She fed her children, clothed them, kissed their bruises, and read them bedtime stories even when she was too tired to stand. Sophia never said Ethan's name, not once. When the boys asked why they didn't have a daddy, she told them the truth, gently, that sometimes people leave because they are afraid of love, and that it's not their fault, or ours. She didn't talk about revenge. She didn't dwell on the past. She poured all her energy into raising two kind, curious, and brave boys who had no idea they carried a last name that once ruled a city. Do you think Sophia did the right thing by not telling Ethan about the twins? Would you have done the same, or would you have tried to contact him again? Tell me your opinion. And yet, late at night when they were sleeping, she sometimes found herself imagining what Ethan would say if he saw them. Would he recognize them as his own? Would he feel anything at all? Or would he do what he did best, turn around and pretend none of it mattered? She told herself it didn't matter, that she didn't care, that she had built a life without him. And it was true. But fate, as always, had other plans. The invitation arrived unexpectedly, tucked away in Sophia's modest email inbox, with a generic subject line. Architectural Futures Forum. Speaker selection. At first, she assumed it was a mistake. She had never presented at a major event, much less in a big city. But the message was real. They had reviewed her design proposal for a low-cost, sustainable, community-focused women's shelter, and they wanted her to speak on the panel. It wasn't a paid gig, but it covered travel and accommodation. It was the opportunity she had dreamed of for years, and the kind of recognition she never thought she'd get as a single mother of two, fighting in the background of the architectural world. She hesitated for only a moment. Then she said yes. Returning to the city after 5 years felt surreal. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt familiar. She arrived with Leo and Sam, two energetic 5-year-olds, who asked non-stop questions on the flight, gasped at the skyline, and said the buildings looked like Lego towers. She dressed them carefully for the forum, in little collared shirts and clean sneakers, and packed a bag full of coloring books and snacks to keep them occupied while she presented. She had no one to watch them, and she wasn't going to let that stop her. They sat patiently near the back of the exhibition space while she stood beside her shelter model, her palms slightly sweaty and her heart racing. The event was held in a downtown skyscraper with glass walls surrounding the space and sunlight pouring in. She tried not to think about the possibility of running into anyone she knew. The city was big. He wouldn't be here. Why would he be? Then she heard his voice. She was in the middle of answering a question from a journalist, when the voice, low, confident, and too familiar to ignore, cut through the air. She froze. Her stomach lurched before her eyes confirmed it. Ethan Vance was less than 20 feet away, laughing softly with a group of impeccably dressed sponsors. He hadn't changed. The blonde hair was still immaculate, the posture as effortless as ever. But he looked older, harder at the edges. His expression was calm, until it landed on her. Sophia saw the moment he realized. First, confusion. Then, shock. Then, something deeper. His eyes darted past her, to the two little boys sitting on the floor behind her table, coloring in silence on the carpet. Time slowed. Ethan's face went pale. His gaze fixed on the twins, and Sophia could see the gears turning, fast and desperate. She didn't move. She didn't smile. She didn't look away. He walked toward her. She stiffened, gripping the edge of the exhibition table as if it could anchor her to the floor. The people around them seemed to fade into background noise. The city, the forum, the years, It all shrank to this impossible moment. He stopped in front of her, his voice barely audible. "Sophia." She didn't respond. He looked back at the boys, then at her, visibly shaken. "Are they?" She held his gaze. "Yes," she said, calm and quiet. "They're yours." He recoiled, stunned. For a moment, he looked like a man who had just been hit. "I didn't know," he said. "I had no idea." "I know," she replied, her voice firm. "I tried. You made sure I couldn't reach you." He blinked, trying to process it all. "But why didn't you try again?" Sophia let out a soft, bitter, tired laugh. "I did. I left messages. I sent letters. Your assistant told me not to call again. I assumed you had made your decision." Ethan looked down, the weight of comprehension settling heavily on his face. He looked back at the children, who were still unaware of who he was. Leo looked up, smiled, and waved innocently. "I need to talk to you," Ethan said, his voice slightly broken. Sophia crossed her arms. "You want to talk now? After 5 years? At a public event?" He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes, I need to explain, and I need to understand." She stared at him for a long time. The pain she had buried deep inside surfaced, but she didn't let him see it. "Not here, not yet. You can't just walk back into this like nothing happened," she said. "But if you really want to understand, start by learning their names." Ethan looked at her, and something broke in his eyes. He turned to the boys, knelt, and asked gently, "What are your names?" The twins looked at him, puzzled, but curious. "I'm Leo," one said. "I'm Sam," the other added. "What's your name?" Ethan smiled sadly. "I'm Ethan." They didn't recognize him. Why would they? Sophia watched from behind the table, her heart pounding. This wasn't the moment she had prepared for. She never thought it would come. And yet, here they were. Not as strangers, not yet as a family. But something had begun to change. The truth was finally out, and nothing would ever be the same. Like this video if you think they deserve a second chance, and don't forget to subscribe to see what happens next. Ethan didn't sleep that night. After the forum, after the longest, most jarring day of his life, he returned to his apartment, a place that once felt like the pinnacle of success, and now felt hollow, stripped of meaning. The image of the two boys persisted in his mind, haunting and vivid. Leo and Sam. Their names echoed in his thoughts like a mantra he had never known he needed. He could still see their eyes, so familiar it ached in his chest, and the way they had looked at him, not recognizing him. They didn't know him. They didn't know he existed. And that realization, more than anything else, broke him. The next morning, he requested a private DNA test. He didn't tell anyone, not his assistant, not his legal team, not his parents. This wasn't about legality. It was about something he couldn't name, something urgent and personal, as if he needed permission to believe the truth, even though every part of him already knew it. The results came back 3 days later, a named match. There was no denying it. He was their father. Ethan stared at the document in silence for a long time. Then he folded it carefully and put it in a drawer, as if it were something sacred and heavy. Not a piece of paper, but a door that had just been opened. A door he had unknowingly locked from the outside 5 years ago. He contacted Sophia through the event coordinator, not wanting to overstep. She agreed to meet him once, at a small cafe in a quiet neighborhood. No lawyers, no assistants, just them. She arrived with her usual quiet strength, dressed simply, her hair pulled back. She looked tired, but serene, and more beautiful than he remembered. Life had molded her in new ways, adding a gravity to her gaze that hadn't been there before. He stood up when she entered. She didn't smile. They sat across from each other. Two people with years of pain between them, and two children who connected them forever without knowing it. For a long moment, they said nothing. The noise of the cafe buzzed around them, clinking cups, steaming milk, quiet conversations. "I have the results," Ethan said finally. "They're mine." Sophia nodded. "I know." He ran a hand through his hair, struggling to find words that meant enough. "I don't know what to say." She looked at him, her eyes clear. "Then don't say anything you don't mean." "I mean everything now," he said. Sophia, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "I believe you," she said. "But that doesn't erase what happened." He looked down, shame flooding him. "I wanted to fight for you. I was going to. But my parents, the board, it all came crashing down. I didn't know how to be the man they expected, and the man you needed." "You chose them," she said, without malice. "You walked away." He nodded slowly. "I did, and I had to raise them without you," she continued. "While you were building empires, I was building cribs. While you were giving speeches, I was trying to make enough for dinner." Ethan winced. Her words weren't cruel. They were just true, and they hit harder than he could have anticipated. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said. "Not yet. I just want a chance. To know them. To be a part of their lives. Even if it's just in a small way. Even if it's just—" He paused, his voice cracking. "I can't go back, Sophia. But I can show up now. I can try." She studied him closely. "They're 5 years old. They don't understand betrayal or loyalty. But they do understand presence. You can't just walk in and out. You can't start and stop. If you want to be in their lives, it has to be for good." "I'm in," he said, without hesitation. "Whatever it takes." She nodded, still cautious, but something in her posture softened. "Then you'll start small. Pick them up from school one day. Come to the park. Sit with them. Let them come to you. If they ask questions, answer them honestly. If they run from you, don't chase. Just be there." Ethan nodded humbly. "Okay, I can do that." As they left the cafe, they didn't part with hugs or promises, just with an understanding, a fragile agreement between two people who were no longer in love, but were connected forever. Sophia walked ahead, and Ethan followed at a respectful distance. Not as a couple, not yet as a father, but as a man finally trying to fix what once went so terribly wrong. How difficult do you think it was for Sophia to accept this proposal from Ethan? And what do you think Ethan will do now? Comment below. Ethan's first visit to the boys' school was nothing like the corporate events he was used to. There were no sharp suits, no rehearsed speeches, no executives to impress. Instead, there were sticky handprints on the classroom walls, paper airplanes flying down the hall, and the unmistakable chaos of 20 children navigating their small universes. Ethan stood near the school door in a casual sweater and jeans, feeling awkward and unsure of what to do with his hands. He had overseen multi-billion-dollar acquisitions without breaking a sweat, but waiting to pick up his sons who didn't even know they were his, made him feel like a nervous teenager. Sophia had set it up carefully. She told the boys a friend would pick them up and take them to the park. No labels, no explanations, just a chance for them to meet him on neutral ground. When Leo and Sam came running out of the school doors, Ethan recognized them instantly. Their blonde hair gleamed in the sunlight, and their identical blue eyes lit up when they saw him, though they didn't fully understand who he was. He knelt, unsure of the script. "Hi, I'm Ethan. Your mom asked me to take you to the park today. Is that okay?" The boys looked at each other, then at him. "Are you the man from the building with all the people in suits?" Leo asked. Ethan smiled. "Yes, that was me." Sam squinted. Do you have snacks? Ethan laughed. Yes, lots. That was enough. They took his hands without hesitation and led him away, chattering about dinosaurs and spaceships and how Leo's teacher said Pluto wasn't a planet anymore, which he thought was totally unfair. Ethan listened to everything, responding when he could, but mostly just soaking them in. Their voices, their expressions, their unfiltered joy. It was overwhelming in the best way possible. At the park, they ran to the swings, and Ethan sat on a nearby bench, watching them. For a few minutes, he allowed himself to pretend that this had always been his life, that he had always been there for them, on days like this, in moments like these. But that illusion was shattered when Sam fell off the slide and scraped his elbow. He didn't cry immediately. He just stood still, his eyes wide and shiny, trying to decide if the pain was worth it. Ethan rushed over without thinking, knelt, and gently checked his arm. "Are you okay?" he said softly. "It's not bleeding, just a little bump." Sam blinked. "You look like Mommy," he said. Ethan paused, then said in a low voice, "I'm trying to be good at this." Sam leaned into him for just a second, and that small gesture almost broke Ethan in two. He looked up and saw Leo standing nearby, watching him intently. There was something calculating in his gaze. Not suspicious, exactly, but a quiet evaluation. Ethan knew that look. He had used it himself a long time ago, when he was trying to decide if someone was safe. Leo finally walked closer. "Are you going to come back?" Ethan looked him in the eye, his voice steady. "Yes, I'll be back." Leo nodded once, as if satisfied. Then he ran off again, calling for Sam to chase him. Ethan stayed there for another moment, trying to catch his breath. That single question, "Are you going to come back?" had felt heavier than any contract he had ever signed. But his answer had come from an honest place. He would be back, again and again. The visits continued, silently and steadily. Ethan showed up at school pickup, at the park, at classmates' birthday parties he didn't know. He learned which juices they hated, which superhero was currently in vogue, and how to separate them when they fought over the same Lego piece. He learned to get down on his knees and really listen, to put his phone away, to simply be there. In time, the boys grew accustomed to him, laughing more and more. They called him by his name, with a little more familiarity. Leo began to ask questions. "Did you know my mommy when she was young? Do you live in a really big house? Why don't you have any kids?" Ethan answered honestly and carefully, never rushing them, never trying to earn something they weren't ready to give. One afternoon, as he was walking them back to Sophia's apartment, Sam reached for his hand without being asked. Leo did the same. Then he looked up and asked, "Why do you always smile when we talk?" Ethan looked at them both, their cheeks flushed from running, their matching backpacks bouncing with each step. "Because I'm lucky," he said simply. "I get to be here with you." Sophia was waiting at the door, her arms crossed, unsure. She always watched him closely after each visit, as if trying to gauge if he had earned another one. But this time, something changed. She saw the boys run inside, laughing, telling her about the swings and how Ethan almost fell trying to run with them. And then she looked at him. "You didn't leave today," she said quietly. "You stayed even when Sam got scared. You stayed even when Leo fell." Ethan nodded. "I told them I would." Sophia looked down, then up at him. "Keep doing that." And just like that, without grand gestures or emotional speeches, the wall between them came down. It wasn't gone, but it was thinner, and Ethan knew this wasn't about being forgiven in a moment. It was about showing up in hundreds of them, and he would, every single time. If this story moves you as much as it does me, give it a like and share it. Ethan hadn't expected the word to come so soon. It had been almost 3 months since he started seeing Leo and Sam regularly. He never missed a visit, never showed up late. He learned to sit in silence when they were in a bad mood, to join in when they asked for help with puzzles, and to listen when they just needed to talk, even if what they were saying didn't make much sense. He was careful not to push too fast. He had accepted that for now he was just Ethan, the man who brought good snacks, played tag without checking his phone, and laughed at their jokes even when they weren't funny. But something had changed. It was a Saturday afternoon. Sophia had an interview for a new design contract and had asked Ethan if he could watch the boys for a few hours. He had agreed immediately, and she had dropped them off at his apartment, which he had recently adapted for children, even though he never thought he would need to. Toys now lived in wicker baskets in the living room. A small table with crayons and construction paper sat near the window. The fridge was full of juice boxes, string cheese, and the kind of sugary cereal he didn't approve of, but bought anyway because they loved it. That afternoon, they built an elaborate pillow fort between the sofas, with tunnels and a command center made of old shoe boxes and flashlights. Leo declared himself captain. Sam insisted on being the science officer because he had brought a magnifying glass. Ethan played along as Commander Dad, a name Sam made up in the middle of their game, saying it without thinking. Ethan froze for a second, caught off guard by the word. Dad. He didn't respond immediately, afraid that if he reacted too much, Sam would take it back. So he just smiled and went along with the game. But inside, he was a wreck of emotions. The word kept echoing in his mind. He hadn't earned it yet. Or maybe he had, slowly, in pieces. Not through grand gestures, but through consistency, time, and quiet love. Later that night, after they had eaten takeout and were lying under the pillow fort watching cartoons, Sam snuggled up next to him and looked up. Can I call you Daddy now, or do I have to wait? Ethan felt his throat tighten. He looked at Sam's small, serious face, then at Leo, who was also watching, silently holding his favorite stuffed dinosaur. Ethan reached out and pulled them both close. You can call me whatever you feel is right, he said, his voice choked up. But if you want to call me Daddy, I would be so proud of that. Sam nodded. Leo gave him a small smile, the kind that says more than words. That night, Sophia came to pick them up. She found them asleep on the sofa, Sam lying on Ethan's chest, Leo curled up beside him, both of them snoring softly. Ethan had also fallen asleep, his arm draped protectively around them, the television still on low. She didn't wake them up immediately. She stood there for a long moment, just watching. Something inside her, something that had been locked away, began to shift. She saw how Ethan held them in their sleep, as if they had always been there. She saw how safe they looked, how peaceful. When she finally woke him, Ethan stirred slowly, blinking as he realized where he was and what time it was. I'm sorry, he whispered. We must have all fallen asleep. Sophia shook her head. They were happy. That's all that matters. As he gently lifted the boys and helped her carry them to the car, she looked at him. Sam called me Daddy today, he said quietly. He asked if it was okay. Sophia didn't speak right away. Then she looked at him and said, he wouldn't have asked if he hadn't already felt it. The drive home was quiet. Ethan rode in the back seat with the boys, holding their hands as they slept. Sophia watched in the rearview mirror, and something inside her settled for the first time in a long time. The walls she had built to protect herself, walls that were understandable and necessary, began to come down. Not all at once, but piece by piece. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay awake in his apartment, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the way Sam had looked at him when he said the word daddy. It wasn't a title you could claim. It had to be given, earned, and now it had been. In the silence of that night, for the first time in years, Ethan felt whole. Not because of success, or wealth, or reputation, but because two small boys had decided to let him in. Not as a guest, not as a visitor, but as their father. Comment below if you think the story will have a happy ending. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Ethan hadn't planned on confronting his parents. He had avoided it for months, suppressing the impulse every time it came up, focusing instead on showing up for Leo and Sam, and earning Sophia's cautious trust. But he reached a point where silence no longer felt like strength. It felt like surrender. The deeper he got into fatherhood, the more he saw what he had almost lost forever, and the more unbearable it became to know that his parents had stolen it from him with a smile and a firm handshake. He had to face them, not for closure, but for clarity. He needed them to see what they had done, and more importantly, what he would never allow them to do again. He arrived at the Vance family estate on a Sunday morning. It was exactly as he remembered. Impeccably landscaped, cold and quiet. A place designed for appearances, not for comfort. His father greeted him in the library, sitting in the same leather chair where so many past conversations had been framed as lectures. His mother appeared moments later, as immaculate as ever, with an unreadable expression. "I'm surprised you came," his father said, clasping his hands. "We didn't think we'd hear from you again." Ethan didn't sit. He stood near the fireplace, his posture calm but unyielding. "We need to talk about Sophia, about the boys." His mother stiffened at the mention of her. "We warned you about her years ago." Ethan turned to her, his voice sharp but controlled. "You didn't warn me. You lied to me. You blocked letters. You ignored calls. You told people to keep her away from me." His father's eyes narrowed. "We did what was necessary to protect your future. You were emotional, unfocused. You would have thrown away your entire legacy for a girl who had nothing." Ethan took a deep breath, fury rising in his chest. "That girl is the mother of my sons, the boys you never cared to know existed. She raised them alone, with nothing, and they turned out better than anything this family has ever produced." His mother stood, her voice brittle. "Don't be so dramatic. Do you think we haven't sacrificed for you? For this name? Your success?" "My success," Ethan interrupted, "no longer has anything to do with this name. The company, the image, the money, none of it matters if it costs me my humanity. You tried to make me choose between love and legacy, and I listened to you. I walked away from the only real thing I had. But I will not make that mistake again." There was a heavy silence. His father leaned back, his tone suddenly colder, more strategic. "So now what? You're going to play house with a woman and pretend to be a family man? You think the world will buy that?" Ethan looked at him, disgusted. "I don't care what the world buys. I care about what Leo and Sam see when they look at me. I care about what kind of man I am when I tuck them in at night. And I care about the woman who carried that weight when I left." His mother opened her mouth, but he didn't let her speak. "I'm not here to ask for your blessing. I'm here to tell you that your control ends here. If you can't accept my family, you will not be a part of our lives. That is your choice. But I am done living under your version of success." They didn't respond immediately. There was a crack in the room, a visible fracture in the illusion of power they had always held over him. For the first time, Ethan wasn't the boy seeking approval. He was the man drawing the line. "I pity you," he added in a low voice. "You'll never know them. You'll never get to hear Leo explain how he thinks the moon controls feelings, or see the way Sam draws his dreams. You'll miss it all, and one day you'll realize you traded your grandchildren for control. He turned and walked out, leaving them in their perfect, empty home. When he returned to his apartment, Sophia and the boys were waiting. She looked up as he entered, reading his face in an instant. "Did you tell them?" she said. He nodded. "Everything." "And?" "They didn't take it well." Sophia walked closer. "Do you regret it?" Ethan looked at the boys, who were building block towers on the floor, their laughter echoing through the room. "Not for a second," he said. That night, after the boys were in bed, Sophia handed him a small box. Inside was a photograph, one she had taken weeks ago when he wasn't looking. He was sitting on the grass at the park, with Sam on his lap, Leo leaning beside him, all three of them laughing. She had printed it. She had framed it. A silent gesture. A thank you. A beginning. Ethan held the photo for a long time before placing it on the bookshelf next to the boys' art projects. He no longer needed anyone else's validation. His family. His future. The life he chose. Finally. On his own terms. What do you think of Ethan's decision to confront his parents? And what do you think this small gesture from Sophia means? Comment below. Autumn in the city had a way of softening everything. The sharp angles of the buildings blurred under a golden light. The noise of the traffic seemed quieter, and even the wind had a kind of tranquility. For Ethan, the change of seasons mirrored what was happening inside him. Something that had been cold for a long time had begun to thaw, and in its place was a warmth he had once been afraid he didn't deserve. It had been almost a year since he found out about Leo and Sam, and every day since then had been a choice. He had chosen them. He had chosen Sophia. He had chosen to show up again and again, not as the perfect man, but as a present one. Life wasn't flawless, but it was full. His mornings began with spilled cereal, mismatched socks, and the chaos of getting 2 5-year-olds out the door. His nights ended with bedtime stories, and small hands curled in his shirt as they fell asleep beside him. His apartment had long ago transformed from a sleek, lifeless bachelor pad into a warm, lived-in home, where finger paints covered the walls and little sneakers were always left by the door. The boys called him Daddy now, without hesitation. Sometimes with excitement, sometimes with frustration, sometimes in whispers when they needed comfort. And each time, it still hit him with the quiet force of a wonder. Sophia, too, had softened. Not entirely. There were still moments when the weight of their history would make her withdraw a little. But those moments were fewer now, and always followed by something small but significant. A look, a hand on his back, an unfinished phrase that was still understood. They had rebuilt trust not through dramatic apologies or grand gestures, but through the simple rhythm of shared responsibility and mutual care. He respected her more than ever, not just for raising the boys alone, but for doing it without letting her pain turn to bitterness. She had every reason to shut the door on him forever, but she hadn't. And that forgiveness, unspoken but felt, was the greatest gift he had ever been given. One Saturday morning, as the boys played in the living room and Sophia made coffee in the kitchen, Ethan stood by the window with a small box in his hand. It wasn't velvet or branded. It was simple, clean, and carefully chosen. Inside was a ring, delicate but strong. He had spent months thinking about how to ask her. At first, he'd imagined something big. Roses, photographers, some sweeping gesture with the skyline behind them. But that wasn't their story. Their story had been rebuilt in quiet hours, in soft apologies, in hallways littered with Lego and notes signed with crayons. He didn't need fireworks. He needed the truth. He walked into the kitchen and waited for her to look up. She raised an eyebrow at the seriousness on his face. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing," he said. "That's the point." He took her hand and led her to the living room where the boys were still playing. They looked up, curious but not surprised. Ethan knelt, and for a moment, everything around them faded into silence. "I don't want to rewrite the past," he said. "I just want to write the rest of the story with you in it. As your partner, as the father of our sons, as the man who finally understands what it means to love completely and to show up completely." Sophia's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She was too strong for that. She smiled, small at first, then wider, and she nodded. "Yes," she said simply, "because I don't need perfection. I just need you." The boys clapped, not quite sure what had just happened, but feeling that it was something good. They piled into his arms, causing him to lose his balance until they all tumbled into a laughing heap on the rug. The wedding came a few months later. It wasn't extravagant. It didn't need to be. They held it in the small community garden Sophia had helped design years ago. Friends gathered, close and quiet, sitting among rows of late-blooming marigolds and ivy-covered fences. The boys wore matching vests and carried the rings, too excited to walk slowly down the aisle. Sophia wore a simple ivory dress, her hair loose with a daisy tucked behind her ear. Ethan couldn't stop smiling as she walked toward him, her steps firm, her eyes fixed on his. There were no speeches about fate, no quotes from poems, just vows spoken from the heart, short, honest, and unpolished. Promises to choose each other, not just on the bright days, but also on the difficult days. Promises to raise a family together, to make mistakes and forgive them, to hold each other accountable and to hold each other close. When they kissed, it wasn't the kind of kiss that marked a beginning. It was the kind that sealed something already built, slowly, painfully, and beautifully. Afterwards, as the sun set and the garden glowed with a golden light, Leo and Sam ran across the lawn, shouting with joy. Ethan stood watching them, his hand intertwined with Sophia's, his chest full of a wholeness he had never known in his old life of boardrooms and silence. He had once believed that success meant power, image, control. But standing there, barefoot in a garden with the love of his life by his side and his sons chasing butterflies in front of him, he finally understood what it truly meant. He was home, completely, finally. And this time, he wasn't going anywhere. This ending is subtly powerful. It's not based on an exaggerated redemption or a fairy tale perfection, but rather celebrates the slow, human work of rebuilding. Ethan's transformation isn't instant. It's earned, step by step, through presence, humility, and a willingness to face what he once ran from. That's what makes it meaningful. The final image, a family built on love, choice, and second chances, is not just beautiful. It's hopeful. It reminds us that broken things aren't always lost. Sometimes, they're just waiting to be rebuilt, one honest brick at a time. What do you think of this ending? Comment your thoughts and subscribe for more impactful stories.